Hi, it's Lynn, your Freedom Financial Coach, and I want to talk today about going from poor to not so poor. And I'm going to talk on this today because I have experience in this. There are voices out there that many times will say, oh, well, you don't know what it's like to be poor. You can't say what you say because you don't know, you don't understand, you haven't been there, but been there, done that. And that's why I feel that I have the right to say the things that I say, why I feel like I can speak on the things, because I have been there and I have done that. So some of the tips that I'm giving might annoy poor people, especially because the tips that I give a lot of times are geared towards people who have things like cars, washing machines, dryers, mortgages, even student loans, because that means a lot of times they have an education, and things like that. I remember feeling that way. I remember how demoralizing it felt, how oppressive it felt, how it felt like people didn't understand. It was like they were speaking a different language when they would give advice on how to, climb out of holes or have financial freedom, because they really didn't understand what it was like to, not even have a dryer or not even have a car. Many people truly don't understand what it is like to barely be able to make ends meet. And to be honest, I may not remember it very well, but I do remember being there. I have some pictures here of some houses. This is an actual house. This is the actual house that I lived in when my ex-husband and I first got married. I don't know if you can see it well there, or I'll move it around a little bit just so in case the lighting isn't quite good. You can see here, it was just a tiny little one-bedroom house. This picture was taken later on. So I think the house was in a little bit better shape than that when I lived there, but not much. I mean, it was in pretty bad shape. That house, when I first moved in, it had a gas leak, and so the gas company refused to turn the gas on, and the landlord refused to fix the problem, and so I cooked on a tiny little grill that I had. It was just like one of those little tiny ones that were, hardly cost any money, and just some charcoal that I had. And also we had borrowed a little electric stove from someone at work to cook on. So that was, I remember trying to make spaghetti noodles, and the spaghetti noodles, just because the heat wasn't hot enough, they just stuck together and it was like glue, and it was terrible. So this was the way that, I started out, and there was no honeymoon. There was no money for any honeymoon. The lawn on this house, this was in a very hot climate, and so the grass didn't really grow that much, but the grass would grow close up to the edge of the house, and I had a pair of scissors. I didn't have a lawnmower, so I went around this house with a pair of scissors to cut the grass back from there. And I also didn't have a vacuum cleaner, so I walked around and I asked neighbors if they would borrow me a vacuum cleaner so I could vacuum. And I had one neighbor who was nice enough to do that. The other ones, I think they thought I might just run off with their vacuum cleaner, so they didn't loan it to me. But so that was how we survived in the very beginning. I call these the chicken thigh and potato years, because we ate lots of chicken thighs and lots of potatoes. I was 19 years old. My ex-husband was 18 at the time. We both had high school diplomas. There was a small apartment that we lived in briefly after we moved out of there, and then after that, there was this White House here. This is the house that after my daughter was born, took her to. This house actually had 2 bedrooms. So we were moving up in the world. Had 2 bedrooms in there, one for the baby and one for us. So that was the house there. There's a boat in the front yard here. This picture was taken in later years, and we could not afford a boat. So these people were rich that were living there because they had a boat. So yeah, they looked like I think this shed was there when we were there as well. So my ex-husband at the time, he worked as a glazer, putting in windows and mirrors into people's houses for $7 an hour at the time. That's about the equivalent of $16.53 an hour in today's money for a family of 3. So that's about $34,000 a year with today's money. Not what we made back then, but today's wage, $34,000 a year. Before I had the baby, I worked at Kmart as a stocker for minimum wage, part-time. I saved money for a car. That it was a Maverick that I got, a white Maverick for $600. I remember because I saved the money that I made working at Kmart so I could buy a car with cash. And the way that I did this is I walked to and from work every day, each way. I remember it being summer, and I was happy because there were peaches on a tree, and I could pick these peaches and eat them. Oh, they were so good. They were just ripe and really good. And I didn't have to pay for those peaches. I would just eat them on the way to and from work. So I saved all the money that I made. Well, maybe not all of it. Probably had to use some of it for expenses. But I saved the money that I made at Kmart and bought a car for $600. And so we had no furniture, no washing machine, no dryer. I washed our clothes in the bathtub and hung them up to dry. And if you've ever done this, you know that clothes get really wrinkly this way. If you don't dry them in a dryer, they can look pretty bad. So an iron, I don't remember when I got an iron, but I just remember how wrinkly the clothes turned out. But I washed the clothes in the bathtub for quite a while because it's really expensive to wash your clothes in the laundromat. So the apartment that we lived in briefly between these 2 houses offered to sell us some furniture because when we moved in, they said something about, oh yeah, you'll have to move your furniture in, and we're like, oh, we don't have any furniture. And they're like, aha. So they took us to another apartment, and they said, all this stuff has been abandoned by other tenants. So you can go in here and whatever you want, and we came to a price agreement. We didn't have the money to pay because we had to have, the down payment for the apartment and the first month's rent, which wasn't easy to come up with. So we had no money left. So we came to a price agreement. They were very happy to get rid of the furniture, and we made payments to them. And we got a bed, I remember, and a dresser, which I still have. I still have that dresser. I still use that dresser because it's a nice dresser. It's a hardwood dresser, not like they make today. It's real solid and sturdy. It's an older one. So let's see. We got a couch from somebody at work. They had this old orange couch from the 70s that they didn't want anymore. And it was ugly, but we didn't have a couch, and it was like couch to sit on. So we got that couch and moved it in. And the church that we were going to borrowed us a card table and some chairs so we would have some place to sit and eat. So, hey, we felt like we were moving up in the world, doing really good. So we didn't ask for any help from family members during that time. The only thing that we ever did was got a loan from my ex-husband's grandmother to pay off the hospital bill for the birth of our daughter, because I think they were going to charge us 18% interest. And we didn't want to pay that. And my ex-husband's grandmother gave us this loan at 6% interest, which was a lot better. So we did that. And if we had asked for help from family members, I don't think there was anyone that could have helped us if they wanted to. We just both came from families that just didn't have very much. So we paid off that debt for the labor and delivery. I don't remember how long it took, maybe a year or two. I also had a student loan debt for my 1 year in college that was $1,500, which seemed like that $1,500 seemed like so much money. I mean, it seemed like $15,000. I accepted WIC from the state, Women, Infants, and Children, and I remember getting cereal every month, like a box or two of cereal, some dried beans. Later on, they changed that to peanut butter, which was much more usable. Some cheese and some milk every month, and that was like a huge boon because the money that I spent, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I think I spent $70 a month on groceries back then. I remember buying chicken thighs. I remember buying potatoes. I remember buying puffed wheat for cereal because it was the cheapest cereal, or cornflakes. Those were the only two except for what we got from WIC, which was sometimes Cheerios. Just bare bones minimum on the food. And I'm sure we could have qualified for food stamps, but I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to rely on the government. I didn't want to. I noticed that any time you got something from the government, there was kind of something they held over your head. I didn't like that idea. And you also hear about people getting, money from the government. Maybe it's in food stamps or with utility help or whatever. The problem with that is that after you make a certain amount of money, then they take that away from you. So it's almost like you're going to have to get over that hump by yourself anyway at some point in time. You can take that assistance, feel like you're living good for a while. As soon as you make more money, it's taken away. In my opinion, the way I looked at it, you may as well just kind of put the rubber to the road right away, learn how to do it. Don't get used to living better than your means. And we did get WIC. That was almost like, maybe it was necessary to get that. So anyway, we also tithed 10% of our income during that time and gave money to foreign missions. Now, if I had to do it over again, I definitely would not give that money to foreign missions because we needed that money. We could have had something more than puffed wheat and cornflakes, maybe. But a lot of sacrifice there. I definitely learned to sacrifice and make do with even less than I had growing up, which, we didn't have a lot growing up. I remember we did get Cheerios and cornflakes. I remember that. But I really wanted store-bought pickles, and we always had pickles from the garden, and my mom's like, no, we have pickles from the garden, eat those pickles. But there was something that I craved in those pickles from the store that I really wanted. And so I would ask for those for Christmas, and I would get store-bought dill pickles for Christmas, so I could have those and at least get my cravings taken care of somewhat. So some pointers here for how to get from poor to not as poor. Number 1, get out of addictions if you have any. Cigarettes, alcohol, any kind of addictions that you have. They'll steal your time, they'll steal your money, they'll steal your energy. It's almost impossible to go from poor to not so poor if you have any type of addiction. Number 2, don't fall into the trap of using payday loans. That'll be a terrible cycle. You'll just go from paycheck to paycheck and they will eat your money. Don't do it. Number 3, generally I don't have a problem with moderate credit card usage. There are certain rules, but I would not recommend any credit card usage while moving from poor to not as poor. It's just too tempting and risky, and the interest rates are just, I would just say if you're in that state, don't use credit cards at all. Number 4, you could ride a bike anywhere, everywhere, or take the bus until you have enough money saved up for a car, if at all possible. Like I said, I did that, been there, did that. While I was pregnant, in the heat, 90 degree, 100 degree heat, it was a sacrifice, but I did it because it helped us get ahead. Sometimes you must have a car and can't bike or walk. But if you take out a loan on a car as a poor person, you'll likely be looked at as a poor risk. Your interest rate will be higher than if it is for someone in a better situation. It isn't fair, but that's how it is. And if you focus on how it's not fair, it's not fair. There's so many things that aren't fair when you're in that situation that hold you down, but try not to focus on how it's not fair and try to focus on what can I do? How can I empower myself to get from poor to not as poor so I'm not in this situation anymore? You could keep saving until you can buy a car that isn't a total clunker, or you'll be spending money on repairs. If you own the vehicle outright, you may have the option for cheaper insurance as well. Some states, require certain kinds of insurance if you owe money on the car, but if you own the car outright. So it's really best to get into the situation where you own the car outright and you don't have to pay that extra insurance. I mean, I think that it's good to have a certain amount of insurance because then you could get into other issues, but just better all the way around to own your own car and not pay interest and all of that. Learn to change your own oil and keep up the other fluid levels and tires inflated as well. It'll help with gas mileage, it'll help with maintenance. You'll just be better off all the way around. Housing. If you are single, find the cheapest place you can that is safe.